Hi, Paul. Good evening, and Barbara, wherever Barbara is. So people are just coming in a little bit late, maybe because of nice weather. Let's begin with a little meditation and motivation as we've learned to do. Sit comfortably, relax your body, relax your mind. Place your mindfulness on the respiration in front. Then let go of your attention to that and instead place it on the mental consciousness, in particular the clear light nature. You can remind yourself that the very presence of appearances to your mind, whether they be visual kind of images or uh, memory of sounds or plans or memories of the past or observations of the present, emotional states, all of these are transient events within the clear light nature of your mind. And their very presence implies the spaciousness of the mind. A little bit similar to what we'll talk about today when we talk about emptiness and appearance. When you have the right view of emptiness, Let go of the appearance of your body. Your mind may be, your mental consciousness may be aware of your body. It's not appearing as a body within your mind, but you're conscious of it. Let go of your perception of yourself as an observer. Focus instead on the subjective mind rather than the objective thoughts. Let go of the appearance of the clarity that you've kind of generated, you've gotten familiar with, that is as yet just an approximation of the clear light nature of your mind. Try to perceive it even more subtle, clear light nature, as though it were the actual clear light nature within which that previous appearance was arising. Once we have, over a course of time, identified this approximation of the clear light nature of the mind, hopefully it's a factually concordant image in our mind. This is at the point that we would begin to use this appearance to generate calm abiding. See if you can hold it without being distracted for as long as you can. Undoubtedly, or let's say probably, you will find that you can only keep it in mind for a few seconds, clearly, without being distracted, losing it for one reason or another. Maybe it becomes unclear, which is an indication of a mental faculty, mental factor called sinking. Or maybe your mind multitasks and jumps onto another object, either something attractive, in which case we call that mental factor excitement, or general scattering due to other mental factors. And feeling some joy in that we are, even in this very short moment, practicing some of the higher practices of Buddhism on concentration. This is due to the fact that we have a life right now of leisure and endowment. The teachings of Buddha exist. We have community of like-minded friends to help us practice, teachers that are teaching. we're free from the unfree states, the states where there's no leisure to practice. And as was asked at the beginning, what's the meaning? What's the meaning of life? I think the meaning of this life of leisure and endowment is that I can use it to achieve the great goals or meanings of liberation from cyclic existence, enlightenment, or at least to leave imprints in my mind of compassion, love, wisdom, based on an understanding of the suffering nature of cyclic existence, a sense of renunciation. To cultivate those states of mind, we need to have an understanding of the path. So we've been studying these stages of the path to enlightenment via this glance meditation composed by the first Panchen Lama on the stages of the path, elaborating on them to a little degree so that when we read the words, it can bring back that understanding, and we can meditate for some moments every day on the whole panorama from beginning to end. I think for this next hour, a little over an hour, I'm going to dedicate this time. I'm going to set this as my motivation to understand this path, to become a better person, not just for my own happiness and well-being, although that will be a side effect, but with a Mahayana motivation of becoming first less harmful to others, and then to actually benefit them, developing empathy, compassion, wisdom, patience. And eventually, with a goal in mind of becoming fully actualized, to become a Buddha. In which state we can effortlessly and spontaneously benefit sentient beings in the most perfect manner, leading them out of suffering into, out of misery and depression and low self-esteem and all the faults of cyclic existence into the very same state of enlightenment. Based on the Buddha's omniscient mind as our goal, sort of we call the resultant refuge of Buddha, or the actual refuge of the Dharma that we're trying to actualize, realizations, based on the assistance of the Arya community, the community of superior beings who've realized emptiness as our Sangha. I'm going to listen to the teachings in order to become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. Only. So Amy has a mask on. Oh, that's her photo. I was wondering where she was wearing a mask. There she is. You're not wearing a mask now. Okay. So, any questions? Anything that's come up since our last class? Any observations, comments? Okay. So we're going to continue a little bit more. We're on I think I introduced last time the verse 105 on the how to train in samten, Tibetan word samten, which means dhyana in Sanskrit, dhyana, not Diana. I sometimes joke. Paul remembers Geshe Zopa had his own little things that when it always would make the same joke every year. So you'll have to excuse me if you hear my same pathetic jokes again and again. He used to talk about, what was that? Gnosis, he would say, not noses, when he was talking about GNOSIS, gnosis, was one of the Sanskrit word is jnana or jnana, which is like one of the perfections, the 10th perfection, the perfection after the perfection of wisdom. It's a wisdom of the conventional also, not just the wisdom of emptiness. Okay, so this verse, and Sunny will put up so that you can see up there again. Jingo nampa yengwe kyongpang ne chukun tenpe denpe tongpe ne lukla sechik nyampa chokpe tinzingi samten bachin sokba jingilap. So here, we did mention this last time. Jingo nampa yengwa are referring to three kinds of faults. Generally, we say that most of the faults fall into two categories: sinking mind, the faults of trying to develop concentration, single pointed concentration, trying to develop calm abiding. So that's not the extent of the perfection of meditation. That's how I'm translating Samten. Here it says firm contemplation. Samten, maybe you could say that. Usually Samten includes all of the samadhis, the single-pointed concentrations, the development of single-pointed concentration, calm abiding, and includes concentrating on the form and formless absorptions also, although you need, in order to develop those states of mind, finer states of mind, you need to use Vipassana, which is the next verse when we're talking about the perfection of wisdom. So here, Jingwa is sort of a mind that has lost its grasp of the object. It's remaining on the object. It's not gone on distracted to something else, but it is sort of like when you're holding your TV tuner at night, scanning the channels. It's so late, and then it falls out of your hand because you no longer, are no longer. Has that ever happened to you? And so when we start to lose the strength and the clarity of that object, the mind is falling under the influence of sinking. And if it leaves the object, generally, because when you get down to when your mind is trained a little bit, the main obstacle is going to something that's a little bit attractive, so that kind of mental activity is called excitement. Here's the sinking, excitement, and distraction. So distraction includes all the other ways that you leave the object. You have the object, but you're angry. You think of your neighbor who's mowing the lawn and disturbing your concentration, or you feel sorry for yourself or something like this, not because of attachment or something attractive, but for other reasons. It's all under the umbrella of distraction. having abandoned the faults of sinking, excitement, and distraction. How do you do that? We didn't mention, and it doesn't mention here in detail, but just probably you've received teachings on how to develop single-pointed concentration in the past. There are different states of concentration that you can achieve that have a certain definable characteristic. When you're able to remain on the object for a few instants without distraction, and then later, longer and longer, then you are overcome with, you have to overcome the obstacle of excitement. Your mind still might be multitasking, either losing the object completely or, kind of thinking about something else at the same time. You have to learn how to apply the antidotes to that. Say, for instance, if you notice your mind is excited and losing the object, to sort of sober the mind up, to bring it down a little bit because it's excited, to think of death and impermanence, and the fact that we have spent most of our life sleeping, maybe not in your case, most of your life, a good portion, you say 8 hours for many decades, and a lot of the time we've been distracted. So to think, I'm going to, death may be coming at any time. So sort of calming the mind and bringing it, putting some squeezing attention back onto the object, not letting it go off. You have to train your mind in that. And then sinking will be noticed, although sinking is always present. You have to learn how to overcome that by elevating the mind, remembering that we have a life of leisure and endowment, that we can achieve single-pointed concentration and develop wisdom, bodhicitta, understanding the benefits of all of these things, to elevate the mind. Even some yogic techniques of imagining your mind at your heart chakra, a little pea-size or smaller little ball that you imagine your mind in, shooting it out the top of your head into the sky, up into space. When all else fails, you can just go outside and look at the sky and elevate your mind, splash some water on you, take off, if your mind is sinking, after lunch, you can take off your sweater or your robe, let some air come under your armpits. Once in Laudo, when Lama Zopa Rinpoche was teaching about we were doing Mani retreat. That means reciting the mantra of Avalokiteshvara, Om Mani Padme Hum. And there were many, many Sherpas, the people that live in that region near Mount Everest, kind of, maybe they're native, a little bit different than Nepali stock, more Tibetan. And the ones who climb Mount Everest, you hear about the Sherpas, right? The Sherpa guides or whatever. And so when, if you were to fall asleep, Lama Zopa sometimes would take a bowl of water off the altar and pour it on your head. It happened a couple of times when we were doing in a small room together with him in his cave. So there are different methods you can do to overcome these faults, but the main method is by familiarity. The same thing that you do when you practice yoga or practice golf or tennis or anything. Again and again, getting familiar with that and, holding the object. Lama Tsongkhapa's special advice when he mentioned about concentration is to hold the general object that you're holding, not to worry about the details at first. And let's say, for instance, if you were to visualize the body of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, in front of you, about one body length in front, just the size of the palm of your hand, if you can imagine that, at the level of your brow. And just imagine that. At first, there would only be, if you try to keep an imagination of that, would only be a little bit unclear, maybe just a golden blur, blob of light in front. That's good enough. Don't worry about the details. Hold that single-pointedly as much as you can. And then in subsequent sessions, you might do, 12-minute session or 10-minute session, maybe 3 or 4 of them in a row. And then you take a break. If you were doing retreat, you have your tea, you walk around, then you'd sit down again. And every time that you begin again, you can begin to analyze. You say the face is like this, the nose is like this, the ears are like this, the body is like this. You might look at a picture, but not during the meditation, just to remind yourself what the image looks like. And in time, the details will come out, but just to be satisfied at the beginning with the general appearance. So same thing with the clarity of our mind, just to be satisfied at first with the general sense of the clarity. Try to hold that without being distracted, without your mind sinking. Difficult, as you saw in our meditation. Jingo Nampa Yangwei Kyongbane, having abandoned the faults of sinking, excitement, and distraction. I seek your blessings to complete the perfection of meditation, or here it says firm contemplation, concentration, through the Samadhi. That means Samadhi is a particular mental factor, right? That is the capacity of the mind to hold one thing without being distracted. That's a word that we use sometimes when we talk about single-pointed concentration. Here it uses the words again, through the Samadhi of one-pointed placement. Seichik Nyampa Jope Tinzingi, with the Tingnezin means, and here abbreviated Tingzin means the Sanskrit word Samadhi, single-pointed concentration, which is placed on one point, and that one point is placed on the one point on the nature of reality. Neluk means is one of the synonyms that refers to the actual way things exist, the nature of reality, which is the emptiness of all phenomena. I say the reality of all phenomena, which is their emptiness of true existence. Sechik Nampa Tobe, Samten Basha, Chukun Tenpe Tokpe Nelukla. So on the nature of all phenomena, Chukun, which is that they are empty of being true, empty of existing the way that they appear as inherently existent. So you might wonder, when you do this, the main point here is talking about how to develop, to remind yourself of the perfection of contemplation. It's talking about the 6 perfections. So you might wonder, why is it talking about emptiness here? Because that's generally the domain of wisdom, right? What do you think? Well, there are many objects that you can use to concentrate on, to develop single-pointed concentration, to develop all of the samadhis, the different kinds of concentration. But when you talk about the 6 perfections, the bodhisattva who has, of course, a bodhisattva already has bodhicitta, right? Because that's the demarcation of entering into the bodhisattva path. They have actual bodhicitta. They have gone through the path of accumulation of merit, the path of preparation, or sometimes called the path of connection. On that path, they develop this kind of single-pointed concentration. In fact, a union of tranquil abiding, and penetrative insight, which we're going to be talking about next. And they use that to meditate on emptiness. So they're familiar with this process already. Once they have a direct realization of emptiness, they become an Arya being on the path of seeing. And on the first bhumi, they have a special practice of the perfection of giving. Second bhumi, special practice of the perfection of ethics or morality. Third bhumi, special practice of patience, perfection of patience. Fourth bhumi, special practice of the perfection of perseverance, we talked about last time. And then on the fifth bhumi, a special practice of the perfection of concentration. But they're still, because their main practice up till now has been using their ability to meditate on emptiness, they take naturally emptiness as their object, as they're perfecting this kind of perfection of concentration. One of the demarcations of developing single-pointed concentration is that your mind is single-pointedly stabilized, abides without distraction on one object as long as you want. And the demarcation of actual tranquil abiding, let's say the qualification, is when you also have induced a special feature of the mind called pliancy, Xinjiang, Shintu Jianghua in Tibetan. Pliancy or flexibility means that the mind and the body, there's two kinds of flexibility, are able to do whatever you want. Right now, our bodies, you might say, I'm pretty flexible. I play squash, I play tennis, I skateboard down Broadway or whatever. I do yoga. But the flexibility here is the ability to do with your body, even to sit for a long period of time without becoming tired and so forth. Flexibility of mind means the ability, as though, you could imagine if the wall were comprised of atoms, that you'd have the flexibility of mind to count each and every one. Right now, we don't have, our minds would get bored and tired and so forth. So generally, once you've reached, there are 9 levels of developing states of mind in developing calm abiding. When you get near the top, you start to develop first an omen of the achievement of pliancy, which is like, not only is your mind single-pointedly concentrated, but it can remain that way as long as you want. And your body, first you'll have an omen of that, sort of a heaviness of your brain, sort of a pleasant feeling on your head. And then there arises what's called the mental pliancy, where your mind feels that you could do anything with your mind that you want. Right now, because our mind sometimes sinks, sometimes is excited or scattered, we can't do what we want with our mind. We'd like to investigate emptiness, but we just can't do it. So when you have that kind of mind, the flexibility or pliancy, there's two ways of translating the same word, Xinjiang. Then you develop, as a result of that, the winds within your body, the prana, become very sort of not scattered around in various places. They become, in a sense, kind of smooth, and you develop what's called physical pliancy. Second, physical pliancy is one of the offshoots of that. Is that there's a Tibetan kind of practice called gomba, where you're walking, you can like walk for miles and miles and miles without fatigue and so forth, if you have this physical flexibility. And of course, you can sit for many, many hours and so forth. As a result of that, you develop a bliss of physical pliancy. So the body feels a very pleasant feeling. It's said in the teachings that that is even greater than the ecstasy of sexual pleasure, the greatest kind of sexual pleasure, which the meat and potato people of our world, and probably all of us to some degree, have relished at some point as like, oh boy. As a result of that, then you have finally a development of the bliss of mental pliancy, which also, I think Gillik Rinpoche's teachings on Lama Chopa, he mentioned that not only do people enjoy the physical pleasure of sexual embrace and so forth, but there's also a mental, it's also the mental satisfaction of that. So as a result of the bliss of physical pliancy, you develop a bliss of mental pliancy. When that occurs, it is like supercharged, blissful experience. In fact, the mind is so saturated with that it's difficult even to concentrate. You have to wait till that subsides a little bit, and then you have fully developed calm abiding. That would be like an example of, one of the goals of the perfection of contemplation. But here, when we're talking about the perfection of contemplation or perfection of concentration, we're talking about utilizing it to meditate on emptiness. Sechik, chukun tempe tompe nelokla. So in order to do that, you have to previously meditated, read, heard about emptiness, thought about it, contemplated it in various ways, gotten a mental image of emptiness, and then holding that single-pointedly. At that point, you're not analyzing emptiness. You're just holding it single-pointedly, leaving an imprint in your mind. It's said that Lama Tsongkhapa, when he was young, when he was a monk and had studied emptiness and everything, he would remain in single-pointed concentration on emptiness all the times. He didn't have to be doing something else. If you're making food or you're putting on your robes or something, like his mind would be single-pointedly concentrated on emptiness. Okay, so that's the verse on the perfection of dhyana or samten, here translated firm contemplation. Usually people call it just meditation. Edward Conze calls dhyana meditation, or you could just say concentration. So that's something we can aspire to. When each of these verses, when you do the glance meditation every day, if you think, wow, when you get to this verse, you think, this lifetime, I could develop that kind of concentration. I could develop tranquil abiding, even if I'm not on the Bodhisattva path yet, and it's not the actual perfection of concentration. I could develop tranquil abiding. That is sometimes likened, the Tibetans liken it to like hot water. With hot water, you can make Chinese tea. I've got someone sent me from Malaysia or from Thailand some Chinese tea. You can make coffee. You can make hot chocolate. You can bathe with it and so forth. Hot water is like the essential ingredient in many kinds of beverages. With single-pointed concentration, you can develop the ability to emanate other bodies. You can develop the clairvoyance that knows past and future lives. You can develop the clairvoyance that knows others' minds. As a bodhisattva, that's one of the essential ingredients to be able to help them to know where they're at, not just what they're saying, but to know what they really need and what their inner aspirations are. All of these can be achieved through a single point of concentration. Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva-charyavatara that all of our virtues right now are relatively weak until we develop tranquil abiding, single point of concentration, at which point, our activities become very powerful in terms of creating virtuous karma. In a very short instant, concentrating, we can leave an imprint in our mind that without concentration might take years or lifetimes to leave that imprint in our mind. When you leave an imprint in the sand, at the beach, you put your hand in the sand. If you just brush the surface, even the wind can sort of blow the sand particles over your handprint. You have to press it in, and even then, the water coming, the tide coming in can take it away, but it will remain for a longer amount of time. So we can leave an imprint in our mind by developing this. So when we do this meditation, the glance meditation every day, when we come to this, you can think, wow, this life of leisure and endowment I have right now can't be wasted, because I could be upstairs right now. I could be in my meditation room or on my cushion or wherever you like to meditate, and practicing every day to develop single point of concentration. As we go through them again and again every day, you kind of see interconnections, how that can inspire you to take advantage of this life of leisure and endowment, because it's something that we can do. So let's go on to the next verse, the perfection of wisdom. And we talk about the 6 perfections. The 6th is the perfection of wisdom. Here it's called the space-like practice of emptiness during the meditative session. I think in Mudra Dharma Bhadra's commentary has different outlines, how he names them. Here he says, the way to train in wisdom has 3 parts. So the next 3 verses we're going to be talking about. Nyamshat Namke Neljor, the yoga of space-like meditative equipoise. Chetop Yume Neljor, the yoga of illusion, the illusion-like yoga in the post-meditation session. And then Ume Tawe Kecho, the special quality of the Madhyamaka view. So this first verse is this one about the space-like meditation. So here, what we're talking about is a special quality of the mind beyond concentration. Because when you're concentrating on emptiness, you are not developing insight into it. It's if you only have concentration, you get an insight into emptiness, understanding it before the meditative session, and then you concentrate on it, on that mental image of emptiness. At that point, wisdom is not the dominant factor. So you need to be able to, within that concentration, you need to be able to analyze emptiness, to get to the point where you can eliminate the faults of our mind. Concentration alone, samadhi, tranquil abiding alone will not lead you to realize emptiness to the extent that you can use that realization to eliminate your delusions. You need to have the factor of wisdom, which in this context is called Vipassana. Have you heard of that? Vipassana? Tibetans say lak tong. Lak means special, tongwa means seeing, or you could say insight, special insight, higher, what are other ways they translate it? So, Deni soso tokbe sherabgi, Drangbe shinjang dechen dangdewa, Dondam napshak namke neldrogi sherab parchin sokpa jingilo. I seek your blessings to complete the perfection of wisdom. Because just having concentration on emptiness alone doesn't complete the perfection of wisdom. Through the space-like yoga of single-minded placement upon ultimate truth, you might say, well, we just talked about that single-pointed placement on ultimate truth just before, right? But here, conjoined with the pliancy and great bliss induced by the discriminating wisdom analyzing suchness. Does suchness mean anything to you? You know what suchness means? I can't see everyone at once because it's got that other thing on there. Who was saying? Philip, did you raise your hand? Do you know what suchness means?
Phenomena, existence.
Oh, well, so
The
this
nature of things.
pencil is suchness. Samsara is suchness. Well, suchness is a synonym of what in the earlier verse we talked about the nature of reality, neluk, emptiness. So suchness is a synonym of that. It means that things are such, this is the way they are. Okay? So what's the difference here from the previous verse when we were concentrating on emptiness? If you have calm abiding and you're meditating on emptiness, still you're not seeing it with wisdom. What you need to be able to do is within that concentrated state where we can hold one object single-pointedly, you need to be able to analyze. And the classic example that's given in most of the texts is like within a calm pool of water, which is analogy here, like the single-pointed concentration. So it's limpid. The delusions, because you're holding your mind is single-pointedly concentrated, the delusions, like the mud at the bottom has sunk down, the distractions have sunk down. The mind is calm. It's not, it's not wavy, just like a calm pool of water. But then you place within that some little goldfish or koi. Do you know what koi are? Koi fish? Jennifer knows. Sunny, do you know what koi fish are? What? You have to unmute. Oh, you can't talk? Okay, it doesn't matter. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So whatever kind of fish you put into the pool, generally at first, if they're not very adept, they're just swimming around, the surface gets agitated. Some of the mud comes up from the bottom as they go down deep and so forth. The analogy here is that when you try to investigate within a concentrated state of mind, that ability to hold one thing single-pointedly is lost temporarily, because you've learned not to be distracted going from one thing to another, to excitement and letting your mind sink. So when you begin to investigate, that causes the stability to be lost. So you begin to investigate a little bit to develop this quality of penetrative insight or Vipassana, higher insight, or special insight. You in order to do that, you have to practice. You have to just analyze a little. You notice that the mind becomes a less stabilized, and then you let go of that and you improve the concentration again. Then within that, you again practice analyzing until practicing again and again like that, you were able to integrate the two, single-pointed concentration with penetrative insight, so that you can hold the object single-pointedly, and still within that concentration, you've learned how to analyze. And here, what you're analyzing is the meaning of emptiness. You will say, you will think, if this self that's appearing to my mind really existed the way that it appeared, it would have to be one with my aggregates, or it would have to be other than my aggregates. Have you heard that argument before? That's something you would establish beforehand. If two things exist, they either have to be the same or different. They either have to be one or different. There's no other choice. You have to, first of all, understand that. Then in meditative session, you would analyze the self that's appearing, that it's not one with the aggregates, it's not different than the aggregates. You would again and again meditate on that and come to the understanding that therefore, if it is not one within the aggregates, the self that appears, the inherently existent self, if it's not different than the aggregates, therefore it doesn't exist. That kind of ability to do that kind of analysis and concentration is called Vipassana. So when you have the union, once you've developed this ability to keep single-pointedly concentrated and analyze within that, that's called a union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight. But that's not yet the full development of that faculty. What you need to do is then to, as we did in concentration, I said when you might have your mind single-pointedly concentrated before in the perfection of concentration, but then you needed to induce the pliancy, the pliancy of mind, flexibility of mind, then the flexibility of body. And then as a result of that, the bliss of the flexibility of body, or pliancy of body, physical pliancy, and then the bliss of mental pliancy. That's the demarcation of tranquil abiding. Once within that single-pointed state, you have that development of the bliss of pliancy, and it's calmed down and it's become stable. Here, you have to do the same thing again. Within penetrative insight, by the force of your analysis now, previously the pliancy was induced by placement, holding single-pointedly. That induced a calmness of the winds, the prana within one's body. It brought about the mental pliancy, the physical pliancy, the blisses of physical and mental pliancy. Now, you're not, the special quality here is that the pliancy now, a newer, deeper kind of pliancy, is going to be induced by your analysis, your vipassana, analyzing. When, as it says here, conjoined with the pliancy and great bliss, induced by the discriminating wisdom analyzing suchness. So now, this is we're talking about trying to develop the perfection of wisdom. Actual perfection of wisdom only the Buddha has. We're practicing the perfection of wisdom. We have a special practice on the sixth bhumi. So at this point, that pliancy, those pliancies are developed through the analysis rather than the placement. Generally, placement means just holding one thing, in place. Analysis means movement, right? Generally, they're contradictory. If you can get the union of the two, then by the force of that analysis within with a calm state of mind, single pointed concentration, that can induce another kind of pliancy, the pliancy that's talked about here. Interesting, although most of the textbooks that you find in English in the West talk about the development of pliancy in tranquil abiding. That's the defining characteristic. Very few talk about the development of pliancy, the stages of it, in special insight. In fact, in Lamrim Chemo, you just see one sentence about it. Here in Mutu Dharmabhadra's commentary, he mentions this, and I've run it by some of my Dharma friends just to see what they, and no one so far has studied this. So anyway, in Mutu Dharmabhadra's text, he says, remember previously we said it, for tranquil abiding, you first had mental pliancy, your mind can do anything, then physical pliancy, then bliss of physical pliancy, the physicals are in the middle, and then the bliss of mental pliancy. Here it starts off when you've developed this ability to analyze within the concentrated mind, like the fish no longer disturbs the surface or the mud comes up. First, you develop a bliss of physical pliancy, then a bliss of mental pliancy, then a new kind of mental pliancy that far surpasses the mental pliancy of tranquil abiding, and then finally a physical pliancy. So I just mentioned that you may never run across that in any of these textbooks in the West, but perhaps if a Lama is teaching sometime, you can get more detail about that. So the order is different than of the development of the pliancies and the blisses of pliancy than in tranquil abiding. Deni soso tokpe sherabgi, with the wisdom that realizes of individual analysis of Deni, which means suchness here, by the discriminating wisdom analyzing suchness. Actually, the word analyzing is not there. It says sosotokpe, which usually means individual investigation. Tokpa and chepa are two different mental factors. Tokpa is like a rough investigation. Chepa means more analysis. I seek your blessings to complete the perfection of wisdom through the space-like yoga of single-minded placement upon ultimate truth, dondam. That means the emptiness of inherent existence, conjoined with the pliancy and great bliss. Or you could say that they're not two different things. It's the great blissful pliancies that is induced by that kind of analysis, that kind of investigation. That kind of understanding, that kind of wisdom, that if we develop about emptiness, we can actually cause the manifest delusions in our mind. Even if we haven't realized emptiness directly, we can cause the manifest delusions in our mind to cease for some period of time. Eventually, when we realize emptiness directly, in fact, the Bodhisattva would have realized emptiness directly much before this. On the first bhumi, they would have realized emptiness directly. But when you realize emptiness directly, you then begin to cease from the very root the delusions, so that they will never arise at all again in the future. Let me pause for a second. See, anyone have a question about this? This is, in a sense, this is one of the most important of the perfections. Amy, what do you think? Any question? No?
I'm just trying to take it all in.
Okay. Barbara?
I feel like it's a lofty goal.
Yeah, but like we have, we have the developmental Buddha nature in our mind. We can develop these things. We just have to put it into practice. So what are the steps? First of all, you want to develop tranquil abiding. You want to develop the ability to concentrate on one thing without being distracted to the other thing, to other things, and without losing the strength of the clarity that you're holding the object. And through that force of stability, you develop those first kinds of pliancies of tranquil abiding. Then you can do amazing things. You can meditate for many, many hours, make realizations, create virtue that's much more positive. Again, when we were in Laudo at the monastery there during the Mani retreats, sometimes as soon as we did the basic puja, which might last, 15, 20 minutes, the rest of the 2-hour session, the local people would all start to recite the mantra. Some of them very loud, some of them very silent. Generally, it's when you recite mantra, it's best that you recite it so that only you can hear it. Sometimes in pujas, you hear people, generally, you might start that way that you can hear it, and then you go down subtler and subtler levels. So these people were just, there's always this murmur going around of Om Mani Padme Hum. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, instead, what everyone else was counting mantras, he would be meditating, develop the motivation for a long period of time. Maybe for if the session was 2 hours, maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes before the end, he'd start reciting mantra, because by that time he'd settled a very special, firm motivation to benefit sentient beings, maybe also meditating on emptiness. Then his 10 minutes of recitation of mantra, because of his concentration and motivation, would create more virtue, virtuous karma, more merit than reciting, the mantras continuously for 2 hours. I remember there was one monk, I can't remember, this short guy. He, in the 2-week Mani, he recited 1 million Om Mani Padme Hums. It was like day, morning till evening. He wanted to achieve that. So, although this is a lofty goal, as Barbara said, it's something that we can achieve. So we just have to put our mind to it. Go back, meditate on the clear light nature of the mind. Remind yourself that there's no obstacle in our mind that prevents me from developing these realizations. Our mind, right now there are some obstacles because we have delusions, we have laziness, and we have attachment to comfort and so forth. Okay. Any thought? Let's go to the next verse. So the next verse, there we go. 107. There we go. Slow. Illusion-like practice of emptiness during post-meditation. So when you meditate on emptiness in the meditative session, like the last verse, that's called space-like meditation on emptiness, because all that appears to your mind, once you've analyzed whether the self, let's say, that's appearing to your mind exists or not. If it existed, it'd have to be one with the aggregates or different than the aggregates, for instance. One example, there are many different reasonings you can use. It's not one with the aggregates for various reasons. Because there are 5 aggregates, there's only one I. Simple reason. It's not different than the aggregates. If it were inherently different than the aggregates, it would have no relationship to the body and mind. So you couldn't say my body. It would be something that's completely separate from you. So once you've realized that, all that appears to your mind, once you've refuted the object of negation, which is the inherently existent I, the only thing that appears to your mind is a mere vacuity. At that point, you're not thinking, this is emptiness. There's no thinking at that point. There's no what was called mind of elaboration, thinking, it's like this or it's like that. There's no conceptualization other than the fact that the mind is conceptual at first. So you have a mental image of emptiness, but there's no conceptualization, which means like thinking of this and thinking of that. All that appears to your mind is a mere vacuity. And it's only when you arise from that that you have a post-realization. Oh, I've realized emptiness. When you arise from that meditative equipoise. The first meditative equipoise is called space-like. All that appears is a vacuity, which is the mere negation of inherent existence. In the same way that space is the mere negation of obstructing contact. So now in post-meditation, you have that understanding, you've realized emptiness, that phenomena do not exist inherently the way that they appear. So you look around and you see trees and houses and fences and, the pressure cooker in the kitchen and your computer, and you see your reflection in the mirror. All these things look real, but you know that they don't exist the way that they appear, as though they were findable in their parts, that there is some kind of real self of phenomena, some kind of inherent existence there. So this is called when you have that, when you have some insight into emptiness in the meditative session, then in the post-meditation session, you can have this insight. It's kind of like almost chuckling to yourself. Oh, that self is still appearing. I know, I've refuted it, but it's still like tenacious. It's like some naughty kid that you've chastised for stealing the apple pie or something, and they come back again and again. So this is when you have what appears to you still appears to be inherently existent, but you know that it's not. It's like the example I've given in other circumstances. Christmas, maybe Philip is walking down the stairs with a pillow under his red suit and big beard on, and the kids are saying, that's Santa Claus. And we see Philip walking down the stairs, and he looks like Santa Claus, but we know he's not Santa Claus, right? Philip, are you actually Santa Claus? No, okay. So here, it's similar kind of thing. We, once we've had that insight that things do not exist the way that they appear, then when we rise from that and we're no longer in the space-like meditation and things conventionally appear to us again, we recognize that they don't exist the way that they appear. So here's some examples. Chinang chunam gyuma milam dang. Chi means external or outer. Nang means inner. Chu means dharmas, phenomena. Outer and inner phenomena means inner phenomena are the phenomena that are conjoined with consciousness, our own body, the things that are internal to ourself. External, all phenomena, whether they be internal or external, are empty of inherent existence. And so when we arise from that meditative experience and they appear to us again, we recognize them to be like illusions, gyuma, like a magical, a magical illusion. Milam means dream. Dang means and. Dangpe sunang dasuk. Dangbe so means pool of water. Dangbe means like clear, it's calm, no ripples on the surface, it's clear. Dangbe so nang, within that, the form of the moon, dasuk. Dawa means Chandra means moon, suk means the form, you could say the reflection, okay? The reflection of the moon in a clear pool, like that. So these are examples that are given by the Buddha in many sutras to exemplify, to give an understanding of how we can be mistaken about things. Like say, for instance, like in a dream, you've just dreamed, you failed your final exam, you're embarrassed, you walk outside, you're depressed, and then you awake from that dream and you, phew, wow, it was only a dream. Has that ever happened to you? Maybe there could be other kinds when you think, oh, I've met the perfect boy or girl. We are so happy. We're meant for one another. And then you wake up from that, and, oh, it was only a dream. You could have nice dreams and bad dreams, but when you wake from them, you recognize at that point, there's still a memory of that dream for a short time, unless you're trained to have been observant of that. Usually you forget, most people will forget their dreams quite, the clarity of them. They might remember some general points of it. They'll forget it quite quickly. So at that point, when you awaken, you recognize it was just a dream. That means what? It didn't really exist the way that it appeared. In the dream, it seemed so real, right? But when you awake from that, you realize, although it appeared to be real, with some insight of having awakened, you recognize it did not exist. An analogy, when you wake up from the slumber of ignorance, having realized emptiness, when you wake up from that slumber and you realize that phenomena don't exist the way that they appear, that's kind of the example of the dream, why the example of the dream is used. The first one here is illusion. So there are magical illusions that are referred to. This doesn't mean the Hollywood, what do you call it? The Las Vegas magicians, the tiger disappears or the swords put through the chamber with a woman or something. This is referring to the kind of illusions that were well known in the past, when a magician, here in this case is someone who has psychic powers. They've have single pointed concentration. They can hypnotize, give a general hypnosis to the audience, and taking a little piece of stick or a stone or something, reciting mantra, he can suggest to the crowd that this is an elephant, and they will see an elephant. Maybe by his own psychic powers also, he may be able to emanate an elephant, looks like an elephant. People are afraid, or a beautiful girl, or a beautiful, handsome man, and the crowd will, in reaction to that, will have, admiration, how beautiful, how wonderful, or frightening if he or she, magician, creates a lion or an elephant or something. That's called an illusion. So the magician who's created the image sees it also, but does not, knowing that he has created this, doesn't have attraction to the beautiful woman or the fear of the lion or something that he's created. Those people in the crowd who have been affected by his hypnosis and suggestion, they will see this apparition and they will believe it. There are, maybe attraction will arise or fear will arise. Those people who come late, if you've ever come late to something, who were not affected by the suggestion or the hypnosis, they don't see anything. They don't see, the lion or the beautiful woman. So I seek your blessings to perfect the Samadhi on illusion so that means in post-meditation, this is the way that you practice the perfection of wisdom when you're not in meditative space-like meditation on emptiness. When you open your eyes to think again and again, these are like a dream. These are like an illusion, or like the reflection of the appearance of the moon in a still pond. So classic example, a child or a deer comes and sees the reflection of the moon. It depends upon a collection of dependent arising circumstances. The actual moon in the sky, the air and the sky not obscured by clouds, so the light can come down, the still pond, and then eyes that see that, and it appears to someone who's untrained in that at first, that that's the actual moon. It's actually empty of being the actual moon, right? It is not the actual moon. Similar to the example of a reflection, I just mentioned that because in Tibetan Buddhism, in Buddhism in general, Mahayana Buddhism, the Buddha gave different examples that help to realize emptiness. So I'll read you a list here. Like magical illusions, that's the Gyuma, like the moon and the water, like visual distortions, like say, for instance, what we call in the West floaters. Does anyone have floaters? The little cells that float around in the fluid of your eye, and it looks like there's some kind of either hairs falling or something like that. Mirages. Do mirages exist? Jennifer, do mirages exist?
I've never seen one, but some people say they've seen one.
Ah, interesting. So you've never driven on the hot asphalt and seen what looks like water in the front, you put on your brakes and you just see it's like the refraction of the light. You don't have to be in the desert, but we know sometimes because of the refraction of the light off of a hot surface, it looks like there's something shimmering there in front. That's like a mirage. Dreams, another example is dreams that we talked about. Echoes. Sometimes if you hear, you say, "You're a jerk," and then after some time you hear the echo of that, "You're a jerk," and you might think, there's someone over there. I've told you my story of the echo before, right? My special story. Diana, you remember, what was it about? You thought I would know clairvoyant.
Thinking that there were 3 dogs.
Yeah, so I was outside at Deer Park reciting my mantra late at night. One dog comes up and then he barks, or she barks, and then there's another dog over there, another dog. For a long time, I thought there were other dogs out there, really believing there was real dog out there. Then I realized they always came in the same sequence. This dog barked, that one. They never barked. Those ones over here never barked unless this one barked. I realized that we're echoes. So echo is another example of things that appear, the implication to your mind is that there's something out there causing the sound, whereas actually it is just an echo. We can understand that when we hear harsh words and people criticize us, that's kind of the echo of our own harsh words. The karma that we created, now it's coming back to us like the wheel of sharp weapons. Echoes. City of the Gandharvas is another classic example. I won't go into that today. Optical illusions, rainbows, you know, when you're a kid, you might, if you're Irish, you might believe there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, so you go searching for it. Lightning, water bubbles, reflection in a mirror. These are all examples of that the Buddha gave to indicate, to give an example of how things can appear real, but to ordinary worldly mind, we understand that they are not real. You know, the face in a reflection. You might not think that that is, that you wouldn't be mistaken. If you go up to put on your mascara or to shave, if you're a woman or a man or vice versa, I don't know. Some men may put on mascara, some women may shave, but you say, oh, I don't mistake that to be my real face. I know my face is here. That's just a reflection. But we can be confused of that. I think I told also this story when I was in India, a lady who had dressed up in a very fine dress, went into the Hilton Hotel, and when the doors were open, she noticed out of the side of her out of the side of her eye, another lady dressed in the same dress. And she's surprised. She looked and she realized it was just a reflection. For that time, we can be confused by reflections. So going back to that verse, this is talking about the post-meditation session. So what is it? I seek your blessings to perfect the Samadhi on illusion. That means a single pointed concentration after the meditation on emptiness by realizing how all outer and inner phenomena lack true existence, but still appear like an illusion, a dream, or the moon's image on a still lake. When you have some insight into emptiness, it's said that you can actually use your dreams. If you can have a lucid dream, when you realize you're dreaming, you can actually use that experience to you see, there's the Buddha, there's the Dalai Lama, there's Trump, whatever, in your dream. And you can say, oh, it looks so real, but you know you're dreaming. If you have a lucid dream, you know you're dreaming. You can use that to revivify your understanding of the illusion-like samadhi in post-meditation. So when you awaken from that, all of these other things you realize are like that. They look so real, but they're actually devoid of existing the way that they appear. We can do that this lifetime. One last verse. We'll just introduce this next verse. Training the mind in particular and in the profound middle view, or in the special quality of the Madhyamaka. There you go. So there were three verses here on the perfection of wisdom. One was the space-like meditation. One was like the illusion-like samadhi. It's in post-meditation. And then the special feature of the Madhyamaka. Korde rangshin dulsam mepadang yude tendel lua mebani pensum gyalme joksu chawai ludu gongdong tokpa jingilo. So here they changed their order of instead of starting with I seek your blessings, they have it a little bit like the verse actually goes. Kor is short for korwa, which means samsara, sort of the cyclic existence. De means beyond, which is nyanyan le depa, beyond, passing beyond sorrow, nirvana. So samsara and nirvana, even in English, it's many, many letters there, but in Tibetan, it's just two syllables, korde. Rangshin means nature, dul means atom or particle. Sam means mere. Meba means not. There's not even an atom of inherent existence in samsara and nirvana. This is what one would realize when one understands emptiness. Yet on the other hand, gyude tenda lua mebani. Gyu means causes, de means results. Here we're talking about cause and result on the psychic level. We're talking about karma. The dependent arisings of cause and effect are, here it says, unbetraying, are, when you create a cause, unless that cause has been eliminated for some other reason, it will definitely bring a result in the future. And we talk about karma, the different qualities of karma. Karma is definite, expanding, never lost. There's no way to experience an effect without creating the cause. When we say that karma will bring a result, does that mean that karma is definite? Just testing. Sani, what do you think? Is that what karma is definite means? No. So Snehi send a mail message. So karma is definite means that virtuous karma will bring happiness. Negative karma will definitely bring suffering. When we say that a karma will definitely bring a result, it's the last one. There's no way to experience an effect without having created the karma. So samsara and nirvana lack even an atom of inherent existence. And on the other hand, we talk about conventional existence, cause and effect, the dependent arising of cause and effect are unbetraying. They're, I can't think of the other word to use. I seek your blessings to discern the meaning.
Inevitable, Venerable George. Inevitable?
Inevitable, unbetraying. I can't even think, there's some lua meba. What do we usually say? I seek your blessings to discern the meaning of Nargajuna's thought. So Nargajuna was the great charioteer who opened up the Buddha's profound teachings on emptiness in the Prajnaparamita Sutras. He re-expressed them some 400 years or more later in a series of texts that we study nowadays. That's usually we say the person who opened up the way of the middle way, Nargajuna, the great Indian saint, 2,000 years ago or so. Lu means Naga, Drup. Was that Nargajuna? Lu Drup. Gongdong means his intended meaning. Tokpa Jingilo, grant me blessings to realize the intended meaning that these two, emptiness and dependent arising, are mutually complementary and mutually not, they don't contradict one another. Generally, Lama Yeshe used to say, when we have an understanding of emptiness, it's almost like nothing exists. And then you open your eyes and you see things and you think emptiness can't exist because things exist, when dependent arisings are existing. So here, and we'll elaborate this a little bit next time again more, the actual meaning of, the demarcation of having realized emptiness correctly is that you'll see no contradiction. That phenomena are empty of inherent existence means that there is some leeway. Things like seeing the clear light nature of the mind, you realize that means thoughts can arise within the mind, right? And the fact that thoughts arise within the mind, this is talking about not emptiness, but just the clear light nature. The fact that thoughts arise within the mind means there has to be space there for them to exist. Similarly, here, in emptiness when we realize that if phenomena were not empty of inherent existence, if they were existing from their own side, they couldn't change. They would exist the same forever. The fact that we have a variety of things in the world that change, we recognize as indicative of the fact that phenomena are empty of inherent existence. And the fact that they are empty of inherent existence means that things can happen, things can occur, things can appear to us. So when you have a correct realization of emptiness, according to Nagarjuna's intention, his motive in teaching about emptiness, you realize that the two are not contradictory, but they complement one another. Okay. So in our last session next week, we're going to finish up the puja with a short, we'll review these two verses again and mention about the Tantra path. There are a couple of verses there, a general verse on Tantra, one on the generation stage, one on the completion stage, and then one on transference of consciousness, then a few verses praying for auspiciousness of the future, the Guru coming and merging with us, and then some final dedication verses, which are very profound. So any thoughts, questions before we end, before we dedicate?
Is this along lines of the Diamond Sutra? The last couple verses sound like what the Diamond Sutra is teaching.
Oh, the Vajracetaka, the Vajra Sutra. Yeah, I think the Chinese, this is a good discussion. It's actually called the Vajracetaka, which the Chinese in maybe the 6th century or so or earlier, when it was translated into Chinese, they chose to call it the Diamond Sutra. Actually, a Vajra is in Indian mythology was sort of like an indestructible instrument. Some great rishi, some great saint blessed his body so that it would become immutable. And when one of the gods, I think Indra, was assailed by some of the other gods, he constructed out of the bones of this rishi, which means like a great saint, constructed this thing that had two ends to it and was like they sometimes say, thunderbolt of Indra. It was indestructible weapon. He was able to fend off the other gods. That's kind of the meaning of Vajra. Vajra is something that joins two things and is indestructible. So the Vajracetaka is a sutra that talks about emptiness, essentially, or sometimes in Chinese called the Diamond Sutra. Yeah, Diamond Sutra is talking about emptiness, also talking about conventional truth, but all the Prajna Paramita Sutras, the Heart Sutra, and others talk about similar subjects. Anything else? Our class is getting a little bit smaller week by week, but that's okay. So, yes, Philip, before we
Thank
go.
you so much for staying these 2 additional weeks.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I hope maybe some of the other people had other things to do. We'll be able to finish up next time. And I mentioned at the beginning, in the fall or winter, we'll have a chance to teach for Shantideva again on the practice of emptiness, which is from the 5th Dalai Lama's composition Lamrim by the 5th Dalai Lama, called The Sacred Words of Manjushri, very famous Lamrim text, the wisdom chapter of that. So let's end again with a little dedication. We began trying to set a good motivation for the class and for this life, for future lives. So there was some general motivation that definitely acted to cause the creation of virtuous karma during this time. And in particular, we may have had special thoughts during that during the session, insights and so forth. These, because of the infallibility of cause and effect, these will definitely, unless they're destroyed by anger or wrong view or abandoning the Dharma and other factors like that, unless they're destroyed, these karmic seeds will definitely bring some pleasant experience in the future. But dedicating these merits to the ultimate goal of enlightenment, the merits themselves may ripen again and again along the way in our realizations, in our development of renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom of emptiness, tantric realizations. But having dedicated them to the ultimate goal, they won't be exhausted until that time. So due to these merits, may I quickly become a Buddha. We say a teaching Buddha, Guru Buddha. And as a result of that, lead each and every sentient being out of misery into the very same state of ultimate bliss, into Buddhahood. Due to these merits, may I quickly become Buddha in order to lead each and every sentient being into that very same state. Thank you very much. So have a good weekend and hope to see you next week. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you.
Venerable
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.